because life is hard.
And it has enough to manage, but we are here to learn, and I feel like the things people, some of these elements about who we are and how we're wired, and we're using our sign just as a guiding post, but there's so many things that make up who we are, like mind, body, soul, energetics, your environment, your ancestral past. Like there's so many components to how you are in this moment. So we're not, I just want to be clear, we're not just using the sign and saying that that's it, but it is a component of who we are, and we're working with it as a just to work with the intentional aspect of saying that, we're all wired a certain way, and that is not always going to be favorable to everybody and how we're wired. But what
Right?
we
Some
have
people are
learned,
natural pain in the asses all the
right?
time.
But what we have learned working with a lot of people is that so often these unfavorable components are needed in very specific situations. So perhaps in certain moments, somebody's behavior or character, you'd be like, oh God. But in the right situation, that person is the one that could absolutely know how to handle it, take care of it, nip it in the bud. Whereas maybe that wouldn't be what you're good at. So it's like we're all wired a certain way, and we all have our elements that are not very good looking all the time, but it's still a strength as well, because there's always going to be a situation where that part of you is going to be needed. However, that being said, we are here to learn. So that means that we got to also look at these components about ourselves and figure out, okay, well, am I really playing nice with everybody? What do I have to learn? If I'm getting that type of reaction from people, what's the lesson in there for me? So it's a two-way thing, right? Like you're always having to make sure that you're checking in with yourself, because especially as an adult, like I like to do something called mirror therapy for myself. Like I like to look myself in the mirror, and especially at night where there's no distraction, there's nobody, just me. And it's particularly if I'm going through something, I'm being challenged, that's when I do real talk with myself. That's when I'm like, all right, Alex, I'm bothered by that. Why? And part of that is also like making sure that I'm not the problem, or how can I support or evolve from whatever challenge I'm in, or what am I contributing that's good, and what am I contributing that's making the problem worse. It's like we all have to get to that point where we're also looking at ourselves and our behaviors and the way we carry ourselves, and make sure that first and foremost we're figuring out, bueno, how am I contributing or not contributing? Like ask yourself that,
Right.
no matter where you are, what situation, family, friends, job, because we're here to do both. We're here to be of support, but we're also here to learn, and
And part of that is, when you start doing those reflections, you start accepting yourself.
yeah.
And however it is that God made you, and how you are in your body, and everybody has tweaks, and
Everybody.
right. Like, look, there's been, my sister's a Pisces, right? So we realize that we are each other's greatest teachers, because we are really great and strong in certain aspects, and we teach that to the other person. And we both have learned to hold space for that other perspective, for that other point of view, because it's always needed. So in my Aries body, I'm like rushing. There's been many times where she's like, enjoy the flowers, enjoy the moment. We'll get there on time, and then we do.
I'll be like, go sit. That's
Go
how
ground.
sometimes when
Go
she's
ground your
upset,
bones.
go ground, But, in turn, for us Pisces, we tend to be the opposite. Sometimes we lag too much. We overthink, or we're not taking action fast enough. And, she's always loved to push me over that cliff throughout my life. It's like, I think you should do it.
This is so funny, and shout out to Troy. Troy knows what I mean. Like, this is my medicine. Are you ready to go?
Yeah. She loves to do that, and she has done that to me my whole life. Okay, but but
Especially
I
around
need
this medium.
but I need that teacher. I need that energy in my life because I'm all the way in the other spectrum. So like she said, we're in literal opposite spectrum. So on one angle, in one way, we're great teachers to each other, but also great challengers because of the way we're wired. So we always have to keep that in mind, working together as sisters within a business capacity or just as regular sisters. We always have to keep those things in mind. Well, okay, understand that there's always going to be more than one solution to a situation. There's always going to be more than one way, but the way we do it is differently. But there are moments, so it's like on one level, we have to remember when we're working, especially with people that are very different, is that there is still more than one way to be successful. It just may not look the way you interpret it, right? But then the other way to keep in mind when you're working with people very closely that are very different is that, yeah, sometimes your fire or your strength has to push that other person, even in those moments that makes them uncomfortable, because it puts you in a position to grow, or to just build on a part of you that maybe you don't think that you would have built before. So the fact that I could sit here and like chat with you guys is a huge evolution for me because I've been running from stuff like this like always, but yeah, my sister has always been like, Thelma, give me a mic, let's go over here. I mean, and not just from in so many different worlds and so many different communities, and
But
it has.
even if I hadn't influenced you in the camera, just by itself, because of the different communities that we have been a part of, there was my sister's little face on the live stream that went
So
worldwide.
true. Everywhere we went, we would always be in a situation where there was a camera. So
I loved it.
Here in my old soul, I was trying to get away from like the
I'm crying.
technology, and then she would be sitting next to me, all excited. Oh my God, this is great! And I'm like,
You did it.
Oh my God!
And she's like, why did I end up sitting right there?
But that's an evolution. The other thing too that's a blessing when you're working with people closely that are very different from you is that when you do learn to see, hey, this is their strength, you release. It's like you learn to release certain things. Like, oh, they're so good at that. I really trust the way they do that. It's not that you can't have input or perspective, but like you learn to let go of the areas that they're so easy at, or even depend on them for that. Like when we had our shop, there were situations within the shop or working with certain characters that she was better at handling, not me, and then vice versa. And we knew that. Like we didn't even have to look at each other. It was almost like we would do we're so close. It was just like real subtle communication,
And then the
and we
other
just
sister,
Yeah.
sister would excuse themselves and let if it was me or her, like either she would leave and I would deal with the person, or the other way around.
Vice
like
versa.
we just knew that it's like, okay, this is
It's like, all right, time for me to bow out, and she's gonna take care of it. And the same thing too with our like clients and community. Like, some people would prefer to, meet with my sister or meet with me because maybe what they were going through in the moment, they needed her type of vibe and character and the way she works,
You
or
gonna
maybe
do
they
it?
need it with me.
You gonna do it now?
Right. So it's one of those things where it working together within the shop or as entrepreneurs, and just as entrepreneurs, no matter where you work, what it is, there's so many constant lessons in terms of how you got to navigate relationships. And honestly, this has been, well, the relationship with yourself is always the most important one, but this has been a very important one because we're not just sisters, we have all these other ways
whole
that we
lives
have
are
to
so
work
intertwined, as we
together.
indicated in the beginning of
Exactly.
the video. And as you can imagine, like attracts like. So a lot of the conversations that we would have privately with people were about exploring these kinds of relationships and being honest. And I think that something that has worked to our success is that we share candidly. We've always been candid with everybody in our shop that when Botanical was open, we were very different in nature and character, and that the way we would approach something, or maybe even receive messages, might even be different. But in
Absolutely.
all of those differences, sometimes we're getting to the same exact place and the very same exact conclusions. And
And that's the way it should be, mi gente. Like, all this going back to what we said at the beginning, joking, we brought up the word canceling, like, or that comes up in our culture and our society these days so much. Like, it doesn't make sense because we're supposed to be different. We're supposed to,
they're supposed to be little robots the
right?
same.
And we all have our strengths, our blessings, and the way that we, receive, and also the way we give. It's so unique to you. And that should be celebrated, and we should push ourselves to learn how to work with one another rather than just like stepping back or shutting the door, because then there's no growth there.